Point of order is withdrawn. The chair recognizes Mr. Burns.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, members. As I was saying, House Bill 2827 basically rewards the success stories of the TMDL program in the Bosque watershed by allowing the remaining compliant dairies in the watershed to be permitted as other dairies are permitted in the state while still maintaining
Mr.
regulation under the
Mr.
TMDL.
Anderson, for what purpose?
Yes, I'd like to raise a point of order on further consideration of 2827 under Rule 4, Section 32C, on the grounds that the bill now fails to properly, objectively provide reliable information.
Noise.
Please bring your point of order down front. Point of order is withdrawn. Chair recognizes Mr. Burns to try again.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I move passage.
Does any member wish to speak for, on, or against the measure? Chair recognizes Mr. Oh, did he want to speak? Yeah. Chair recognizes Mr. Anderson to speak against the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members, and I appreciate your time here and all of this. Bottom line is there's some changes been made by this bill that can materially impact the way water quality in the North Bosque River Basin. That's a basin that's about 80 miles long and about 20 miles wide, and there's about 40 dairies there. Nobody's trying to put dairies out of business. Nobody's trying to restrict dairies in a great way. We're not trying to run off dairies. We're just very concerned in the fact that the Brazos River Basin is a sole source river basin. That's the North Bosque River runs all the way down to Lake Waco, the reservoir that was that the founding fathers in Waco developed a number of years ago. And the changes in this bill, the TCUQ going from an individual permit to a general permit, it changes some of the requirements, such as if it goes over 500 parts per million in phosphorus, which is the main problem in the water issue, because it causes more growth of plants, and then when the plants degrade, it causes odor and water problems. And so bottom line is that there's 220,000 people that depend on Lake Waco, businesses and people, for their water supply. 20 years ago, that was compromised quite a bit in odor and taste. And Waco went through $60 million to try and improve that. And the legislative solution to this in 2021 was to establish the independent permit, which restricted a lot of what the dairies could do. So this is kind of going backwards. It's a little premature. The system is working well. That is, the water quality is improving, but it's still not clear. And by changing this up at this point in time, it certainly can have a negative impact in a very short period of time. So bottom line is that it's something that we're very concerned about. The Hispanic Chamber, the African American Chamber of Commerce, the Greater Waco Chamber of Commerce, all have expressed their worry and concern about this. And we want to make sure as we go forward that we try and monitor this river basin. And as soon as we see changes, we need to make sure that we try and come back and improve that. The one other issue is very concerning to a lot of people. They actually formed a coalition along the riverbed because private property rights were infringed. That is, their neighbors would start to build or expand or one thing or another, and they didn't even have to notice them, or they didn't have any chance to have a contested case hearing. That's changed in this bill. So where it said that there weren't any significant changes, there have been. Those folks, as you would be, if you had your farm or ranch or even your home and your neighbor was doing something that was dilatory, you'd want to make sure you knew about that. And so with that...
Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Turner, for what purpose?
The gentleman yield for some
Will
questions.
the gentleman yield for questions?
I certainly will.
Gentleman yields.
Thank you, Representative Anderson, and I appreciate your comments explaining why you oppose this bill. And for those of us who don't represent the Central Texas region and don't represent Waco, McLennan County like you do, I just want to try to draw that out a little bit and make sure everyone understands kind of what's at stake for your community here. So the Lake Waco is the primary source of drinking water for McLennan County for over 200,000 people. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And Lake Waco is part of the Bosque River watershed. Is that right?
It's a sole source riverway that is that Bosque, North Bosque comes down, runs directly into Lake Waco.
Right. Okay. So basically, they dammed the Bosque River and created Lake Waco, right?
Right.
Okay. So more than 20 years ago, this legislature took action because the water quality in Waco was suffering. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. And so there were health concerns because it involves drinking water. Is that right?
That's correct.
And there were other concerns too. Is that right? I mean, the water didn't taste very good. It didn't smell very good. Isn't that correct?
That's absolutely true. As a matter of fact, another individual that reached out to us was the Waco Restaurant Association, because they had such a hard time back then with cooking and with having drinks, iced tea, coffee, things like that, because of the negative odor and taste. Consequently, Waco, as I mentioned, they went extensive projects. They established the Waco Wetlands, which is a little under 200 acres, that has a natural cleansing function there. Then they actually established a air flotation type filtration system that kind of bubbles up and collects some of the algae and bacteria, things like that, before it's cleaned off. And then they had the two water treatment plants. So they
and they did all that because it was a public health issue, but also an economic development issue, was it not? I mean, isn't it true that like the Waco Chamber of Commerce and other leading business organizations really worked on this issue, both locally, in the legislature, federally, in Congress, to try to address this issue because it was threatening the water supply for McLennan County, and in so doing, affecting public health and also affecting economic development. Is
absolutely.
That not, am I right on that? Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Even the hint of water problems is a burden to economic development. So that's a critical issue also.
Right. And like you, I have great respect for Chairman Burns. I think he's one of the most decent members of this House, and I respect. He's fighting for his district, right? And I absolutely respect that, as I'm sure you do. And we all fight for our districts, isn't that right?
That's absolutely right. Chairman Burns is a good friend, and he's trying to represent his people there. And let me say, there are no villains in this issue. The dairymen are hardworking folks and family people. There's no villains.
But would you agree with me, Representative Anderson, that when a member's trying to do something for his or her district, we generally try to help support that member, right? Irrespective of geography or party or anything else, if it just affects their district, we try to help them what they're trying to do in their district. I try to do that for other members. I think other members have done that for me. Has that been your experience also?
Absolutely.
Right.
And let me say, geographically, this watershed is, like I say, it's about 100 miles by about 20 miles roughly. It's the only place in Texas that has any implication like this on the dairies. So the rest of the dairies, I think there's 350 altogether around the state, are not impacted by this. It's just about 40 dairies within the watershed.
Would you also agree with me, though, the challenge that we all often have on this floor is when a member's priority for their district conflicts with a member's priority for another district, and then members have to balance those two things. That's what we have here, is it not?
Absolutely, that's the case. It's a collision of intents there, and everybody's trying to do their job. And so it's important, though, that we attempt these things and vocalize these things and educate the members of this House as to some of the issues that we're dealing with.
And I hope, and the way I try to always do this test is that if it hurts another member's district, and in this case hurts the people of their district, which is what I fear this bill will do, that it will hurt constituents in your district, that we as members balance those things and try to come down on the side of do no harm. And I fear this bill, while well-intended, is going to do harm to your constituents. That's why I'm going to vote against it, and I hope other members would consider doing so as well.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. It's very insightful. And let me say there are no villains here, but this is an important issue. 220,000 people are impacted by what comes down that river. And so I think there's better ways to go about this. And I would ask that with due consideration, and like I say, with nobody's trying to run off the dairies. I've been on ag and livestock for 19 years. And we have helped the dairymen many, many times. And so, but in this situation, I think it's premature, and I think it will have potential to hurt the waterway and the quality of the water. So I would ask that everybody consider a no vote on this bill, and appreciate your time. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Mr. Burns to close on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Let me say this. I have the utmost respect for my good friend, Doc Anderson, and I understand what that he's concerned about
Mr.
the folks
Speaker?
in his community.
Mr. Guerin, for what
Would
purpose?
the gentleman yield for a couple of questions?
The gentleman yield for questions.
Yes, sir.
Gentleman
Thank you,
yields.
Mr. Burns. Mr. Burns, I know you represent a lot of dairy farms. I've got a place, that's surrounded by them, basically. So I understand where you're coming from. But this bill supposedly does not change the current pollution control requirements in place for dairy operators. Is that right?
That's correct.
Well, if that's the case, what's the purpose behind removing pollution remediation mechanisms in Section 26.504C for fields testing excessively high for phosphorus, particularly when phosphorus is the primary pollutant of concern for the impaired watershed?
What the bill does is keeps in place the TMDL requirements. And at the discretion of the TCEQ executive director, if there's a problem under the provisions of the law, the TCEQ can implement any mechanism, any remedy that they see fit in order to bring the watershed into compliance and bring those dairies into compliance. So
But
if
under
they see,
current law,
if they,
but under current law, if I'm not mistaken, doesn't it require them to do it without TCEQ having to step in?
under an individual permit, they are required to do that. If we change from an individual to a general, they are not. However, the TCEQ commissioner has the discretion on an individual basis to exact any remedy available to him, which includes
I understand that they
requiring
would
him
have
to
the
do the
discretion, but
third-party
under
testing.
current law, there is no discretion. Is that correct?
Under current law, there's discretion as well.
There is no discretion under current law, TCEQ discretion. It has to be done. Isn't that correct?
Oh, it has to be done, yes, sir. But if they want to move forward or increase the testing requirements under an individual or a general, the TCEQ has the discretion to do that.
They will have the discretion if you do this. It'll move it to discretion from requirement. Is that not correct?
They would have the discretion to require this testing if we move to a general permit. Correct.
This bill also adds Section 26504F that describes the soil sampling requirements. This subsection prohibits soil sampling of a third-party waste application field. In other words, for the people that don't understand that, the field where they may dispose of this waste. What is the purpose of prohibiting that requirement?
To comply with the current requirements under a general permit, which is what all the other dairies in the state operate under.
Not all the other dairies in the state, but the dairies
Most
that
of
are
the other
outside.
dairies in the state. And however, the TCEQ commissioner can still require that third-party testing under a general permit if he sees fit, because again, any remedy is available to TCEQ to make sure that the watershed is in compliance.
I understand that those remedies would be, but why? My question is, why would you put that on TCEQ when right now it's already there?
Because to draw that in line with what's required under a general permit. And philosophically, because it's on a third party's piece of land that a person may not be able to control.
Well, if a dairy operator is disposing of manure, liquid waste, or sludge into high phosphorus and other nutrients, and they're applying within a watershed that is impaired for nutrients, doesn't it make sense to know the levels of phosphorus in the fields where they're applying this?
If the TCEQ requires it, then it makes sense.
Well, I understand what you're trying to do in changing the permit, but I think you're putting too much stuff on if TCEQ. Right now, they have to do it, and TCU doesn't have a damn thing to say about it.
I would accept an amendment to add those three things if you'd like to offer it.
No, sir, I just think I appreciate where you're coming from, and I appreciate you representing the dairy farmers, and I want to help Doc Anderson with the people in their drinking water in Waco.
Thank you.
Will the gentleman yield for questions?
Ms. Orr, for what purpose? Ms. Orr, for what purpose?
I have a question.
Gentleman yield for questions.
Yes.
Gentleman yields.
Does your House Bill 2827 allow for any input from municipalities or consumers that are supplied by water from this watershed?
Yes, it does. It allows, under a general permit, public comment from any interested party.
And does your bill affect or reduce in any way the testing required by TCEQ to ensure water quality for its consumers?
No, because under the law and under the rules of the TMDL, all manners and methods to enforce the water quality within the watershed are available to the TCEQ, whether it's in an individual or a general permit.
And Mr. Burns, are you aware of House District 13 that I represent?
I am.
Are you aware that Waco is in my House District,
I am.
as well as Bosque,
Yes, ma'am.
as well as 6 other counties?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
You bet. So, members, I just want to impress upon you that if I thought this was going to hurt the city of Waco, the water quality of this watershed, of the folks that I have represented for the last 8 years that I consider family in Bosque County and Somerville County, I wouldn't have even filed the bill. The point is, this is a success story. This TMDL program has been in place for 20 years, and we've met the goals of the TMDL program all along the lines, all along the watershed. We simply want to change the permitting process, but leave those regulations in place and the remedies in place to TCEQ should something ever happen. Thank you for your time today, and I would appreciate your favorable vote. I close. Move passage.
The question occurs on the passage to engrossment of House Bill 2827. This is a record vote. The clerk will ring the bell. Show Mr. Burns voting aye. Show Mr. Ashby voting aye. Show Mr. Landgraf voting aye. Show Ms. Click voting aye. Have all voted. Being 77 ayes, 61 nays, House Bill 2827 is passed to engrossment.
Mr. Speaker,
Ms. Collier, for what purpose?
I move to reduce to writing the comments between myself and Representative Shine on House Bill 5.
Members, you've heard the motion. Is there any objection? Chair hears none, so ordered. Mr. Doorkeeper.
Mr. Speaker, I have a messenger from the Senate at the door of the House.
Admit the messenger.
Mr. Speaker, I'm directed by the Senate to inform the House that the Senate has taken the following action. The Senate has passed the following measures. SB 252.
Chair lays out in second reading House Bill 3286. The clerk will read the bill.
HB 3286 by Click relating to certain prescription drug benefits under the Medicaid Managed Care Program.
Chair recognizes Ms. Click to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House Bill 3286 will protect Medicaid patients by preventing a medication on which they've been stable from being switched because of a change to the preferred drug list. There have been several stakeholder conversations about protections and adjustments that need to be made in light of other legislation that's been considered this session. Mr. Speaker, I do have a couple of amendments.
Following amendment, clerk will read the amendment.
Amendment by Click. This is the 51.
Chair recognizes Ms. Click to explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, this is an agreed-to amendment that removes the applicability section as HHSC has indicated federal law requires this to apply to both managed care and fee-for-service delivery systems. This is acceptable to the author, and I move adoption.
Ms. Click sends up an amendment. The amendment is acceptable to the author. Is there any objection to the adoption of the amendment? The chair hears none. The amendment is adopted. Following amendment, clerk will read the amendment.
Amendment by Click.
Chair recognizes Ms. Click to explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, this amendment is also the result of negotiations, and it requires HHSC to include all drugs and drug codes on the federal Medicaid drug rebate program in the vendor drug program, including rulemaking processes for making them preferred or non-preferred. This is acceptable to the author, and I move adoption.
Ms. Click sends up an amendment. Is acceptable to the author. Is there any objection to the adoption of the amendment? The chair hears none. The amendment is adopted. Another one. Following amendment, clerk will read the amendment.
Amendment by Click.
Chair recognizes Ms. Click to explain the amendment.
Members, this amendment just removes the 10-mile restriction radius. It is acceptable to the author, and I move adoption.
Ms. Click sends up an amendment. The amendment is acceptable to the author. Is there any objection to the adoption of the amendment? The chair hears none. Amendment is adopted. Is there anyone wishing to speak on, for, or against House Bill 3286? The chair recognizes Ms. Click to close on the bill.
Thank you, members. I move passage.
Question occurs in the passage to engrossment of House Bill 3286. This is a record vote. The clerk will ring the bell. Show Ms. Click voting aye. Show Mr. Canales voting aye. Have all voted. There being 142 ayes and 0 nays, House Bill 3286 passed to engrossment. Members, the next bill on the calendar is House Bill 3887. The Senate companion is over ineligible. The chair lays out on the second reading Senate Bill 1023. The clerk will read the bill.
SB 1023 by Nichols, relating to the establishment and posting of the maximum loads permitted on certain bridges.
Chair recognizes Mr. Canales to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, this is a straightforward bill. Allows the Texas Department of Transportation Authority to assist counties or municipalities installing on an off-system bridge maximum loads permitted for safety measures. Move passage.
The question occurs in the passage third reading of Senate Bill 1023. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say nay. Ayes have it. Senate Bill 1023 is passed to third reading. Representative Canales moves to lay House Bill 3887 on the table subject to call. Is there any objection? The chair hears none. The motion is adopted. Chair lays out on second reading House Bill 1105. The clerk will read the bill.
HB 1105 by Price, relating to the administration of a medication and the ordering and administration of an immunization or vaccination by a pharmacist.
Chair recognizes Mr. Price to explain the bill.
Mr. Speaker, members, House Bill 1105 should sound very familiar to most of you. We passed this bill off the House floor 137 to 7 last session. This bill extends what pharmacists have been doing for the last 3 years by making permanent in Texas statute the authority for pharmacists to order and administer recommended routine vaccines for patients 3 and up. House Bill 1105 simply allows the pharmacies that want to provide these immunizations the ability to continue to do so and allow an additional parental option for when and how they choose to get their children immunized. There's no mandate involved, there's no fiscal note, and it improves access. No one has to utilize this option if they don't want to, and I believe there are some amendments.
Following amendment, clerk will read the amendment.
Amendment by Tinderholt.
Chair recognizes Mr. Tinderholt to explain the amendment. Ms. Gomez, for what purpose?
May I call point of order? I would like to raise a point of order against further consideration of this amendment and that the order violates Rule 11, Section 2, and is not germane.
Please bring your point of order down front. Point of order is withdrawn. The amendment is withdrawn. Following amendment, clerk will read the amendment.
Amendment by Tinderholt.
Chair recognizes Mr. Tinderholt to explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Mr.
Members, I'm just
Speaker.
trying to change
Ms.
the
Sweener,
age.
for what purpose?
I raise a point of order under Rule 11, Section 3, that the Tenderhold Amendment does the opposite of the purpose of the bill.
Please bring your point of order down front. The point of order is withdrawn. The amendment is withdrawn. Chair recognizes Mr. Tinderholt to speak against the bill.
All right, thank you, Mr. Speaker, members. I know some of us in the past have voted for this, but we get wiser as time goes on. And I look at this, and the reason that I did the amendment that I tried to put on to make it 10 years old is I firmly believe at this point that a young child under the age of 10 should go to their physician. Why do I think that? I think they should go to their physician because the physician knows their background. They know what they're allergic to. They know whether they've already had the vaccine or not, and they know potential reactions. I understand the intent of the bill, and I get why we're trying to do that. I just don't agree with young children going to get a vaccine from the pharmacy when they could have adverse reactions, they could be allergic to things, and they could have already had it. By the age of 10, I figured that they would be able to verbalize those things. So for those reasons, I'm going to very respectfully disagree with my peer, who I respect immensely, and I'm going to vote no, and I hope you'll consider voting no with me.
Chair recognizes Mr. Price to close on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Members. Thank you for the opportunity to lay this bill out. Pharmacists have been administering vaccines for over 20 years. They've been administering for the last 3 years under the Federal PrEP Act, just the way we're codifying it in this legislation. And ages 3 to 5, last year, only 3 adverse effects out of hundreds of thousands of immunizations that were provided by pharmacists in Texas resulted in the need to go to the emergency room. It's statistically insignificant. It's very safe. Pharmacists are very well trained. They have hours and hours of training on administering these vaccines. It's completely safe. It's not about mandating anything. No one has to take advantage of this. It's particularly helpful in rural Texas where access is key. I greatly appreciate your consideration. As I said, we haven't changed the bill. The bill passed off this floor 137 to 7 last session. Please vote yes on this bill. I move passage.
Good job, Chairman.
Thanks.
The question occurs in the passage to engrossment of House Bill 1105. This is a record vote. The clerk will ring the bell. Show Mr. Price voting aye. Show Ms. Howard voting aye. Show Mr. Cortez voting aye. Show Ms. Click voting aye. Show Mr. Jatan voting aye. Show Mr. Hefner voting aye. Have all voted. Being 113 ayes, 28 nays, House Bill 1105 is passed to engrossment. Chair lays out in second reading House Bill 636. Clerk will read the bill.
HB 636 by Patterson, relating to the applicability to election judges of a prohibition on the carrying of a handgun at a polling place.
Chair recognizes Mr. Patterson to explain the bill.
Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Bryant, for what purpose?
I raise a point of order against further consideration of CSHB 636 under Rule 4, Section 32C, that the bill analysis is materially misleading.
Please bring your point of order down front. Point of order is withdrawn. Chair recognizes Mr. Patterson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, this bill is a refile from last session that passed the House, but unfortunately ran out of time in the Senate. Section 32.075 of the Election Code outlines the duties of election judges, and individuals are currently tasked with similar duties to that of peace officers, such as preserving order and preventing breaches of the peace. 2018 Attorney General opinion clarification was provided on the ambiguity of Second Amendment rights applying to election judges during election time. Citing Hooks versus State, the Attorney General concluded that the presiding election judge had the same power as a district judge to enforce order and keep the peace. What this bill does is it codifies the AG's opinion and also extends that to early voting for the person acting as the election judge. I move passage.
The question occurs on the passage to engrossment of House Bill 636. This is a record vote. The clerk will ring the bell. Show Mr. Landgraf voting aye. Show Mr. Martinez voting no. Show Mr. Harrison voting aye. Show Ms. Collier voting no. Show Mr. Vasut voting aye. Have all voted. Show Ms. Jones of Harris voting no. Have all voted. Being 79 ayes and 59 nays, House Bill 636 is passed to engrossment. Chair lays out on second reading House Bill 33. Clerk will read the bill.
HB 33 by Landgraf relating to the enforcement of certain federal laws regarding regulating oil and gas operations within the state of Texas.
Chair recognizes Mr. Landgraf to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, this is the Texas Energy Independence Act to help prevent federal overreach. I move passage.
The question occurs in the passage of engrossment of House Bill 33. This is a record vote. The clerk will ring the bell. Show Mr. Landgraf voting aye. Show Mr. Canales voting aye. Show Mr. Darby voting aye. Have all voted. There being 87 ayes and 51 nays, HB 33 is passed to engrossment. Chair lays out on second reading House Bill 1385. Clerk will read the bill.
HB 1385 by Moody relating to access to criminal history record information by county offices providing pretrial release services.
Chair recognizes Mr. Busey to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, this is Chairman Moody's bill. House Bill 1385 is one of those bills that doesn't make a policy shift, but simply tweaks the law to make sure people can do the jobs we've asked them to do. Pretrial service offices monitor people released on bond after they've been accused of crimes, and part of that is reviewing data about recidivism to make sure they're doing a good job and adjusting best practices appropriately. There's some technical restrictions that make it difficult for them to get the aggregate criminal history data they need for the purpose from DPS, and this bill simply fixes that problem, and Representative Moody does have an amendment.
Following amendment, clerk will read the amendment.
Amendment by Moody.
Chair recognizes Mr. Busey to explain the amendment.
Mr. Speaker and members, Representative Moody's amendment fixes a concern some counties brought that the way we drafted the language would actually create new problems in data sharing that would prevent them from giving magistrates the criminal history data they need to make bond decisions. That's the last thing we want to do, so this amendment just gets the language right. It's acceptable to the author, and I move adoption.
Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Canales, for what purpose?
Parliamentary inquiry.
Please state your inquiry.
Can the chair lay out his own bill from the chair?
No, I don't believe that's permitted. Mr. Busey sets up an amendment that I gave him.
Yes,
it's acceptable to the author. Is there any objection to the adoption of the amendment? Chair is none. Amendment is adopted. Is there anyone wishing to speak on, for, or against House Bill 1385? Chair recognizes Mr. Busey to close on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage.
Question occurs on passage of engrossment of House Bill 1385. All those in favor say aye. All opposed say nay. The ayes have it. House Bill 1385 is passed to engrossment. Chair lays out in second reading House Bill 1879. Clerk will read the bill.
HB 1879 by Darby relating to the provision of counseling services by certain providers under Medicaid and reimbursement for those services.
Chair recognizes Mr. Darby to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, this bill allows master-level behavioral health providers to be reimbursed by Medicaid while competing clinical hours for full licensure. The bill does nothing to expand Medicaid, and I do have one qualifying amendment.
Following amendment, clerk will read the amendment.
Amendment by Darby.
Chair recognizes Mr. Darby to explain the amendment.
Thank you, members. This amendment simply clarifies the technical cleanup to correct a couple of drafting errors in the committee substitute. Move adoption.
Mr. Darby sends up an amendment. The amendment is acceptable to the author. Is there any objection to the adoption of the amendment? The chair hears none. Amendment's adopted. Chair recognizes Mr. Darby to close on the bill.
Move passage.
Question occurs in the passage to engrossment of House Bill 1879. This is a record vote. The clerk will ring the bell. Show Mr. Have all voted. Being 107 ayes and 30 nays, House Bill 1879 is passed to engrossment. Chair lays out in second reading House Bill 1896. Clerk will read the bill.
HB 1896 by Guillen, relating to civil and criminal liability for the unlawful disclosure or promotion of intimate visual material.
Chair recognizes Mr. Guillen to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Speaker. Members, this helps address the growing issue of revenge porn by prohibiting AI applications from modifying intimate visual material featuring individuals who did not consent to the modification. Move passage.
Question occurs in the passage to engrossment of House Bill 1896. All those in favor say aye. All opposed say nay. The ayes have it. House Bill 1896 is passed to engrossment. Chair lays out in second reading House Bill 2265. The clerk will read the bill.
HB 2265 by Leach, relating to the award of compensatory damages caused by certain delays under governmental construction contracts.
Chair recognizes Mr. Leach to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, this bill, House Bill 2265, would prohibit a governmental entity from utilizing contractual clauses to shift the consequences for delays it's solely caused on private sector contractors. This bill will help restore fairness and mutual enforceability of contractual clauses on government construction projects. I do have a short amendment, members.
Following amendment, clerk will read the amendment.
Amendment by Leach.
Chair recognizes Mr. Leach to explain the amendment.
Thank you, members. This amendment is really a cleanup amendment. It excludes indirect costs not related to the project in the applicable contract from the definition of compensatory damages. It's the final piece of negotiations with various stakeholders on the bill. I move adoption of the amendment.
Mr. Leach sends up an amendment. The amendment is acceptable to the author. Is there any objection to the adoption of the amendment? The chair hears none. The amendment's adopted. Is there anyone wishing to speak on, for, or against House Bill 2265? Chair recognizes Mr. Leach to close on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage.
The question occurs in the passage to engrossment of House Bill 2265. All those in favor say aye. All opposed say nay. The ayes have it. House Bill 2265 is passed to engrossment. Chair lays out on the second reading House Bill 2350. Clerk will read the bill.
HB 2350 by Harris of Anderson, relating to the authority of a political subdivision to regulate certain activities.
The chair recognizes Mr. Harris of Anderson to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, this bill eliminates redundant license or regulation or registration requirements by cities and counties. I have an amendment.
Following amendment, clerk will read the amendment.
Amendment by Harris of Anderson.
Chair recognizes Mr. Harris of Anderson to explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, this is the amendment that was brought to me by the Catholic Bishops Association to take care of any concerns with creditors, and I move adoption.
Mr. Harris of Anderson sends up an amendment. The amendment is acceptable to the author. Is there any objection to the adoption of the amendment? The chair hears none. Amendment's adopted. Is there anyone wishing to speak on, for, or against House Bill 2350 at this time? Chair recognizes Mr. Harris of Anderson to close on the bill.
Move passage.
Question occurs in the passage to engrossment of House Bill 2350. This is a record vote. The clerk will ring the bell. Show Mr. Harris of Anderson voting aye. Show Mr. Turner voting no. Have all voted. There being 89 ayes and 51 nays, House Bill 2350 is passed to engrossment. Chair lays out in second reading House Bill 2534. The clerk will read the bill.
HB 2534 by Turner, relating to the confidentiality of working papers and electronic communications of administrative law judges and appeal judges under the workers' compensation system.
Chair recognizes Mr. Turner to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, this is a recommendation from the Division of Workers' Compensation. House Bill 2534 creates a narrowly tailored exception to the Public Information Act for draft work product of administrative law judges within the Division of Workers' Compensation. This exception mirrors the current exception provided for the State Office of Administrative Hearing Judges. I move passage.
Question occurs in the passage to engrossment of House Bill 2534. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. House Bill 2534 is passed to engrossment. Chair lays out on second reading House Bill 2443. The clerk will read the bill.
HB 2443 by Harris of Anderson, relating to the authority of certain persons to petition a groundwater conservation district to change certain rules.
Chair recognizes Mr. Harris of Anderson to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, this bill gives landowners and groundwater rights owners the right to petition its governing groundwater conservation district. Move adoption or move passage.
Question occurs in the passage to engrossment of House Bill 2443. All those in favor say aye. All opposed say nay. The ayes have it. House Bill 2443 is passed to engrossment. Chair lays out in second reading House Bill 2616. Clerk will read the bill.
HB 2616 by Vasu, relating to the operation of and lighting equipment for medical examiner vehicles and vehicles operated by justices of the peace in certain circumstances.
Chair recognizes Mr. Vasu to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, those circumstances are when they are going to a DOA. Move passage.
Question occurs in the passage to engrossment of House Bill 2616. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed nay. The ayes have it. House Bill 2616 is passed to engrossment. Chair lays out in second reading House Bill 2291. The clerk will read the bill.
HB 2291 by Slauson, relating to the carrying or possession of a handgun by certain retired judges and justices.
Chair recognizes Ms. Slauson to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, this bill would just allow retired justices who have a license to carry a handgun the ability to carry in places that they could when they were an active justice. Move passage.
The question occurs in the passage to engrossment of House Bill 2291. All those in favor say aye. All opposed say nay. The ayes have it. House Bill 2291 is passed to engrossment. Chair lays out in second reading House Bill 1833. Clerk will read the bill.
HB 1833 by Shaheen, relating to increasing the criminal penalty for the offense of criminal mischief involving a public power supply.
Chair recognizes Mr. Shaheen to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, House Bill 1833 is intended to deter individuals from damaging key electrical power supplies in Texas. There's a growing concern about attacks on key power substations that provide significant amounts of electricity to large populations. Over the last 5 months, 9 substations have been attacked in North Carolina, Washington State, and Oregon alone, cutting power to tens of thousands of people. These state legislatures and others are taking action against these attacks. House Bill 1833 will help protect the Texas power supply. Move passage.
The question occurs in the passage to engrossment of House Bill 1833. All those in favor say aye. All opposed say nay. The ayes have it. House Bill 1833 is passed to engrossment. Chair lays out in second reading House Bill 1794. Clerk will read the bill.
HB 1794 by Schaefer, relating to the eligibility of the University of Texas at Tyler to receive formula funding for the University School of Pharmacy.
Chair recognizes Mr. Schaefer to explain the bill.
This bill allows UT Tyler Pharmacy School to receive formula funding. Move passage.
The question occurs in the passage to engrossment of House Bill 1794. All those in favor say aye. All opposed nay. The ayes have it. House Bill 1794 is passed to engrossment. Chair lays out in second reading House Bill 1528. Clerk will read the bill. Clerk will read the bill.
HB 1528 by Smith, relating to magistration proceedings for criminal defendants and the retention of related records, to services and representation provided to indigent criminal defendants and indigent juveniles, and to the governance and administration of the Texas Indigent Defense Commission.
Chair recognizes Mr. Smith to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. HB 1528 is intended to improve our state's indigent defense system. It consists of 9 proposals adopted by the governing board of the Texas Indigent Defense Commission, and I move passage.
The question occurs on the passage to engrossment of House Bill 1528. Sir, all those in favor say aye. All opposed say nay. The ayes have it. House Bill 1528 is passed to engrossment. Chair lays out in second reading House Bill 3867. The clerk will read the bill.
HB 3867 by Busey relating to notification and documentation requirements regarding certain behavior management for a student enrolled in a special education program of a public school.
Chair recognizes Mr. Busey to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, House Bill 3867 will direct public school personnel to perform a mental and physical health wellness check for students enrolled in special ed after an incident of physical restraint. I believe there is an amendment.
The following amendment, clerk will read the amendment.
Amendment by Hull.
Chair recognizes Ms. Hull to explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, this amendment requires parental consent and the reporting of restraints. Move adoption.
Ms. Hull sends up an amendment. The amendment is acceptable to the author. Is there any objection to the adoption of the amendment? The chair hears none. The amendment is adopted. Is there anyone wishing to speak on, for, or against House Bill 3867? Chair recognizes Mr. Busey to close on the bill.
I move passage.
Question occurs on the passage to engrossment of House Bill 3867. All those in favor say aye. All opposed, nay. The ayes have it. House Bill 3867 is passed to engrossment. Chair lays out in second reading House Bill 3827. Clerk will read the bill.
HB 3827 by Lambert relating to the regulation of earned wage access services, creating a criminal offense, providing an administrative penalty, authorizing a fee.
Chair recognizes Mr. Lambert to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, in recent years, earned wage access products have emerged in the marketplace as an innovative way for employees to meet short-term liquidity needs that arise between paychecks without turning to more costly alternatives like traditional payday loans. With the growth of this innovative business model, HB 3827 seeks to establish a necessary set of boundaries to guide the ethical growth of earned wage access companies and to protect their consumer base from bad actors. I move passage.
The question occurs on the passage to engrossment of House Bill 3827. All those in favor say aye. All opposed say nay. The ayes have it. House Bill 3827 is passed to engrossment. Chair lays out in the second reading House Bill 3136. Clerk will read the bill.
HB 3136 by Campos relating to the issuance by the Texas Department of Housing and Community Affairs of certain federal forms of purposes of allocating low-income housing tax credits, authorizing an administrative penalty.
Chair recognizes Ms. Campos to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, this bill expedites issuance of the IRS Form 8609. This form is issued by the TDHC and certifies that a developer was awarded affordable housing tax credits. Needless delays in providing this document has complicated the filing of tax returns for development owners and investors. I move passage.
The question occurs in the passage to engrossment of House Bill 3136. All those in favor say aye. All opposed say nay. House Bill ayes have it. House Bill 3136 passed to engrossment. Chair lays out in the second reading House Bill 3462. The clerk will read the bill.
HB 3462 by Noble relating to the consolidation of ombudsman programs administered by the Health and Human Services Commission.
Chair recognizes Ms. Noble to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Consumers, ombudsman staff, and the HHSC program staff face a confusing set of authorities and procedures established by 5 separate ombudsman statutes. This bill will consolidate and streamline those 5 ombudsman statutes, and I move passage.
The question occurs in the passage to engrossment of House Bill 3462. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. House Bill 3462 is passed to engrossment. Chair lays out in second reading House Bill 4447. Clerk will read the bill.
HB 4447 by Cook relating to impoundment, storage, and notification fees for vehicles stored at vehicle storage facilities, authorizing fee increases and decreases, requiring the adjustment of authorized fees.
Chair recognizes Mr. Cook to explain the bill.
Thank you, Speaker. Members, House Bill 4447 relates to vehicle storage facility fees, which is a regulated industry. These hardworking road warriors have not had an increase to their maximum notification fees since they were frozen in 2005. The 86th legislature authorized TDLR to adopt biennial price adjustments based on changes to the consumer price index for impound and storage fees, but only since 2019, and the legislature did not address price adjustments for the maximum notification fee. Let's help these hardworking road warriors. Move passage.
Question encourages the passage to engrossment of House Bill 4447. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. House Bill 4447 is passed to engrossment. Chair lays out in second reading House Bill 4402. The clerk will read the bill.
HB 4402 by Bell of Kaufman relating to the changes to the high school graduation requirements and accountability rating system for assessing campus and district performance.
The chair recognizes Mr. Bell for a motion.
Mr. Speaker, I move to postpone further consideration of House Bill 4402 to June the 22nd, 2023.
Members heard the motion. The objecting chair hears none, so ordered. The chair lays out on second reading HB 698. The clerk will read the bill.
HB 698 by Niave Criado relating to the remote participation of certain persons in a proceeding for the issuance or modification of a protective order.
The chair recognizes Ms. Niave Criado to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, members. Last session, during the interim, the Speaker had an interim charge that specifically asked the Juvenile Justice and Family Issues Committee to study examine the obstacles to the reporting of domestic violence and to look at any new technologies that could facilitate reporting without putting victims at risk of further harm. The Juvenile Justice and Family Issues Committee heard testimony, and from the testimony, this solution arose. It is to allow virtual protective orders, and it's specifically with respect to protective order hearings, and I move passage.
The question occurs on passing the engrossment of HB 698. All in favor say aye. Opposed say nay. The ayes have it. HB 698 is passed the engrossment. The chair lays out on second reading HB 380. The clerk read the bill.
HB 380 by Busey relating to the Secretary of State posting on the Secretary of State's internet website databases containing certain information about elections.
The chair recognizes Mr. Busey to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, House Bill 380 would improve transparency and accessibility for voting by requiring the creation of 2 databases on the Secretary of State's website that would include comprehensive election information. I move passage.
The question occurs on passing the engrossment of HB 380. This is a record vote. The clerk ring the bell. Show Mr. Busey voting aye. Have all members voted? Show Mr. Toth voting nay. Have all members voted? There have been 115 ayes and 23 nays. HB 380 is passed through engrossment. The chair lays out on second reading HB 5311. The clerk read the bill.
HB 5311 by Toth relating to the creation and operation of a development zone by and the tax revenue received by the Woodlands Township, providing authority to issue bonds, providing authority to impose assessments and taxes.
The chair recognizes Mr. Toth to explain the bill.
Speaker, members, HB 5311 enables my community, the Woodlands, which has been ranked the #1 place to live in America by Niche.com, to receive a portion of its mixed beverage taxes. Move passage.
The question occurs on passing the engrossment of HB 5311. All in favor say aye. Opposed say nay. The ayes have it. HB 5311 is passed the engrossment. The chair lays out on second reading HB 5264. The clerk read the bill.
HB 5264 by Bowers relating to the adoption and use of certain performance indicators to measure and evaluate career school or college programs.
The chair recognizes Ms. Bowers to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. For members, first I have an amendment. All right. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, currently career schools and colleges have no review or oversight on the quality and standards of training for Texans who are pursuing a certificate or license through these programs. These programs will establish necessary oversight and quality standards for career schools and college programs. HB 5264 will protect students from making sure they are not wasting the time, money, and other resources of subpar programs.
The following amendment, the clerk read the amendment.
Amendment by Bowers.
The chair recognizes Ms. Bowers to explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, this amendment does a very important thing. We have worked with the Texas Workforce Commission on this amendment by providing sufficient time for rule development and collection of data. There will be no cost to the TWC to implement this bill, and they have assured us that it completely zeroes out the fiscal note. I move adoption.
Ms. Bowers sends an amendment. The amendment is acceptable. The author's objection to adoption. Amendment. Chair has done. The amendment is adopted. The chair recognizes Ms. Bowers to close on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill will help employers recognize strong employees, and it will keep Texans safe by ensuring truck drivers, allied health service professionals, and other vocational workers are given the appropriate training. I move passage.
The question occurs on passing the engrossment of HB 5264. All in favor say aye. Opposed say nay. The ayes have it. HB 5264 is passed the engrossment. The chair lays out on second reading HB 3323. The clerk read the bill.
HB 3323 by Goodwin relating to food system security and resiliency planning.
The chair recognizes Ms. Goodwin to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, House Bill 3323 will create the Food Security and Resiliency Planning Council, which will work to ensure food system security and resiliency. These days, we face disruptions caused by extreme weather events, supply chain issues, labor shortages, and global events outside our control. It's critical that we plan for the future so we can continue to feed the people of Texas. The council will include members appointed by the governor, lieutenant governor, and speaker. The Texas Farm Bureau supports this bill, and I have an amendment.
The following amendment, the clerk read the amendment.
Amendment by Goodwin.
The chair recognizes Ms. Goodwin to explain the amendment.
Members, this amendment just matches this bill with the Senate version of the bill. It makes some adjustments to membership on the council, specifies the minimum and maximum grant amount, and provides for a reporting to the legislature. I move adoption.
Ms. Goodwin sends an amendment. The amendment is acceptable. The author's objection to adoption amendment. Chair hears none. The amendment is adopted. The chair recognizes Ms. Goodwin to close on the bill.
Move passage.
The question occurs on passing on engrossment. HB 3323. This is a record vote. The clerk ring the bell. Show Ms. Goodwin voting aye. Have all members voted? There being 88 ayes, 51 nays, HB 3323 is passed to engrossment. The chair lays out on second reading, HB 3439. The clerk will read the bill.
HB 3439 by A. Johnson of Harris relating to veterinary services performed on certain animals in the care of a releasing agency.
The chair recognizes Ms. Johnson of Harris to explain the bill.
Mr. Speaker and members, many Texans families face significant barriers to access to veterinary care for their pets due to high costs and the state's shortage on veterans. This bill would allow for those who are unable to afford or low income for certain shelters to be able to provide vet care. They are not required to do it. It is only if they want to do it. I do have two amendments, and I am so grateful that I've gotten a chance to work with our vets here on the floor, and I'm going to move passage after we accept both of their amendments.
The following amendment, the clerk will read the amendment.
Amendment by Rogers.
The chair recognizes Dr. Rogers to explain the amendment.
Mr. Speaker, members, this amendment adds that the releasing agency will keep records of these cases. It's acceptable to the author.
Dr. Rogers sent an amendment. The amendment is acceptable. The author's objection to the adoption of the amendment. The chair hears none. The amendment is adopted. The following amendment, the clerk will read the amendment.
Amendment by Rogers.
The chair recognizes Dr. Rogers to explain the amendment.
Mr. Speaker, this amendment puts the originally agreed upon 50% of median household income back into the bill. I believe it's acceptable to the author. Move adoption.
Dr. Rogers sent an amendment. The amendment is acceptable to the author. The objection to the adoption amendment. The chair hears none. The amendment is adopted. The chair recommends Ms. Johnson of Harris to close the bill. The question occurs on passage to engrossment of HB 3439. This is a record vote. The clerk will ring the bill. Show Mr. Johnson of Harris voting aye, Dr. Stuckey voting aye, Dr. Rogers voting aye, Dr. Anderson voting aye. Show Mr. Hunter voting aye. Have all members voted? All members voted. There being 103 ayes and 39 nays, HB 3439 is passed to engrossment. The chair lays out on second reading HB 3137. The clerk will read the bill.
HB 3137 by Isaac relating to prohibited local regulation with respect to a firearm or air gun.
The chair recognizes Ms. Isaac to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. Section 229.001 of the Local Government Code prohibits municipalities from adopting regulations relating to a host of activities related to firearms, weapons, and ammunition. House Bill 3137.
Mr. Johnson, for what purpose?
Will the young lady leave for a question?
For questions, yes.
She will yield for questions.
Representative Ice, does your bill take away the legal authority of cities to be able to govern themselves?
How does that relate to this bill?
What does your bill do?
It protects our Second Amendment right.
What does your bill specifically do?
It will not allow municipalities to require insurance on firearms.
So, other words, does your bill prohibit mayors, city councils, and county commissioners from legally governing themselves when it comes to guns?
They do not have this right.
They don't have the right to do what?
To infringe upon our Second Amendment.
You mean, again, cities, mayors?
Correct.
Do mayors, city councils, and county commissioners have a right to pass laws that protect the citizens of their community?
As long as it doesn't infringe on our constitutional rights.
The constitutional right to do what?
To protect ourselves with our Second Amendment.
From what?
From a tyrannical government.
A tyrannical government? Which government currently is being tyrannical?
Say that again? I'm sorry.
Which government is currently being tyrannical?
Yeah, it would prevent any tyrannical
Is there
government.
a municipality currently that this law is in place?
Yes, actually there is.
Where?
San Jose, California.
Oh, I didn't know we were California. I'm asking in Texas.
I'm sorry, say that again.
Is there a city in Texas?
Okay. Okay. No, there is not, and this bill will prevent that from happening here in Texas.
So then that means we're legislating nothing?
We're preventing it from happening here in Texas.
So it hasn't happened yet?
That's correct.
And so, again, we're legislating nothing.
Don't California my Texas.
Are we legislating nothing? So we're legislating nothing. There's no city that is currently doing this, or
we are protecting our Second Amendment right here in Texas.
We're protecting that. That's
Yes.
great. I'm glad we're
Preventing
protecting
it from happening.
I want us to protect our rights. Everybody here wants to protect the rights of every citizen. We want to make sure that every citizen is protected and has the legal authority to do what they need to do. I'll wait. My question is, when we pass laws, do you think we pass laws in the state of Texas to protect citizens?
Yeah, I'm sorry. You have to say that again. Let me put my earpiece in. Okay.
Is it your opinion that we pass laws in this state to protect citizens?
We also pass laws to guard our rights and
Again, my
protect our
question,
rights.
I promise you, this is not a gotcha. I'm not trying to set you up. I'm actually asking a very specific question. Do we pass laws in this state, from this body, cities, municipalities, and counties, do we pass laws to protect citizens?
Yes.
Do you believe...
Mr. Johnson of Harris, please confine your remarks to the bill before the House.
Yes, sir. Do you believe criminals? Do you believe criminals like laws?
Criminals, only law-abiding citizens obey laws.
Law-abiding citizens obey laws.
Mm-hmm.
So again, if municipalities want to create a law for their particular community that protects them, that city council, that mayor, that county commissioner have all said, we want to protect our citizens of this community. Do you think they have the authority and the right to protect their city from unlawful
people.
As long as it doesn't infringe upon our rights.
The rights of that community was elected. You keep saying the rights. I'm asking for that city. Do cities have the right to protect their citizens? I'm not trying to infringe on your rights. I'm not trying to infringe on anybody's rights. I'm simply asking, can a mayor, county commissioner, city council make the decision to protect their citizens? Not of where you're from. I'm saying I'm from Houston. Can the mayor and the city council and the county commissioners all decide we want to protect our citizens without infringing upon your rights in wherever you're from?
As long as it doesn't infringe upon our rights, yes.
All right, so no. What I'm trying to find out is how and why, if a city wants to protect itself, would we as a state because those cities are duly elected by the people that elected them, and they can make laws that need to be changed if necessary. Do we as a state need to govern cities?
When they infringe upon our rights, yes.
Thank you. When they infringe upon the rights, my question is, what city has infringed upon the rights of citizens in the state of Texas? With this bill, with a bill that would force anybody to carry insurance. Because currently, you said there is no city currently that has an ordinance or a bill that forces them to. So again, if that city, if there's none, then what is the bill for? Nobody's infringing on your rights right now.
Here, don't California my Texas.
I'm sorry?
To prevent it from happening here in Texas.
But it's not happening currently is my question.
And it won't after this passes.
You said we don't want anybody infringing on your rights.
That's right.
Right. And right now, nobody is infringing upon your rights, right?
And we want to keep it that way.
We want to keep it that way. But can the cities make the decision for themselves?
Unless they infringe upon our rights.
Thank you, ma'am, for not asking questions.
I move passage.
The question occurs on passage and engrossment of HB 3137. This is a record vote. The clerk will ring the bell. So Mr. Leach voting aye, Ms. Isaac voting aye, Mr. Bumgarner voting aye, Mr. Schottenstein voting aye, Ms. Orr voting aye, Mr. D'Alio voting aye. Of all members voted, there being 87 ayes and 57 nays, HB 3137 is passed to engrossment. The chair lays out on second reading HB 4246. The clerk will read the bill.
HB 4246 by Orr relating to delivery of certain unclaimed money for scholarships for rural students, rural economic development, and energy efficiency assistance.
The chair recognizes Ms. Orr to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, this bill allows electric co-ops to retain additional unclaimed property for energy efficiency initiatives, economic development, and scholarships. I move passage.
The question occurs on passing the engrossment of HB 4246. All in favor say aye. Opposed say nay. The ayes have it. HB 4246 passed the engrossment. The chair lays out on second reading HB 4713. The clerk will read the bill.
HB 4713 by PLISA relating to group health benefit plan coverage for early treatment of first episode psychosis.
The chair recognizes Ms. PLISA for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I move to postpone voter consideration of House Bill 4713 until 10 a.m. on Monday.
Members have the motion's objection. Chair hears none, so ordered. The chair lays out on second reading HB 2133. The clerk will read the bill.
HB 2133 by Timish relating to authorizing certain political subdivisions to change the date on which the general election for the officers is held.
The chair recognizes Ms. Timish to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, this bill is important to my district. It will allow the city of the colony the flexibility to change the date that they hold their general elections for officers from November to May. This is a nonpartisan issue that the residents have continuously brought forth to the city over the last 10 years. This move passage.
Mr. Speaker, will the gentlelady yield for questions?
Ms. Timish, would you
yield
for questions? She yields for questions.
Thank you. This is the bill that we knocked off local and consent. Are you familiar that our platform, Republican platform, plank 242J specifically wants us to move everything and consolidate them into November, but you're moving it from November to May. Did you know that that our party plank specifically wants us to not do what you're doing? 242J.
Huh?
And then, so you said that your constituents. Go ahead.
It says consolidated. It doesn't say November.
So you said that your constituents did this. We watched the hearing and we only had one person testify, and that was your mayor. Are you aware that your mayor contacted my office and asked me the other day why I was killing his bill? He called my office and asked me that. Were you aware of that?
Members not advised.
So my concern is that you said that your constituents wanted this. It's something that the party is not wanting to do, and you're telling us your constituents wanted it, but your mayor called me and asked me why I was killing that bill that day. I'm confused.
I'm sorry that you're confused.
I'm going to speak against the bill then.
You're doing fine.
The chair recognizes Mr. Tinderholt to speak in opposition to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, look, this is pretty simple. A couple of years ago, we passed a bill that allowed us to move elections to November, which I think most people in this room believe that having 60, 80, 90,000 people and having a small percentage of those people vote in a municipal election in May. Right now, the Arlington city count or the mayor's race is happening, and the other day we only had 2,000 people out of almost 400,000 voting. The November elections would have tens of thousands of people, which creates a significantly better representation. So, and then when she says that her constituents came to her, we looked at the footage, and it was really simple. One person came to testify for the bill, and it was mayor, and her mayor is the person that came to us and specifically said, why are you killing my bill? So with those in mind, I'm going to vote against this bill, and I hope you'll consider doing the same.
The chair recognizes Ms. Timish to close on the bill.
I move passage.
The question occurs on passing the engrossment of HB 2133. This record vote, the clerk will ring the bell. Show Ms. Timish voting aye, Ms. Swanson voting aye, Mr. Shaheen voting aye, Mr. Patterson voting aye, Mr. Leach voting aye. Show Mr. Leach voting aye. Have all members voted? There being 114 ayes and 24 nays, HB 2133 is passed the engrossment. The chair lays out on second reading HB 4779. The clerk will read the bill.
HB 4779 by Bojani relating to the prosecution of the criminal offense of organized retail theft.
The chair recognizes Mr. Bojani to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, the definitions of organized retail theft and shoplifting or property theft overlap in the penal code. A person in possession of stolen property necessarily convicts both offenses under current definitions. Police can charge shoplifters with organized retail theft, even in instances of minimal shoplifting. This bill clarifies the definition of organized retail theft and ensures that minimal shoplifting is not prosecuted as such. I move passage.
The following amendment, the clerk will read the amendment.
Amendment by Patterson.
The chair recognizes Mr. Patterson to explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, this amendment would reinstate Class A and Class B misdemeanors for organized retail theft. As amended, this bill would still allow criminal charges regarding all theft amounts below and above $100 in value, which would allow law enforcement to more accurately charge crimes based off of their theft value. I'd like to thank my good friend, Representative Bojani, for working with me on this amendment, and I move adoption.
Mr. Patterson sends an amendment. The amendment is acceptable. The author of the objection to the adoption of the amendment. The chair hears none. The amendment is adopted. The chair recognizes Mr. Bojani to close on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage.
The question occurs on passing the engrossment HB 4779. This is a record vote. The clerk will ring the bell. Show Mr. Bojani voting aye, Mr. Leach voting aye. Show Mr. Jones of Dallas voting aye. Show Mr. Hayes voting nay. Have all members voted? There being 95 ayes, 45 nays, HB 4779 is passed through engrossment. The chair lays out on second reading HB 3377. The clerk will read the bill.
HB 3377 by Jones of Dallas relating to HIV and AIDS tests.
The chair recognizes Mr. Jones of Dallas to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, House Bill 33, oh, sorry about that. No, I got my wrong one. All right, House Bill 3377 would ensure that HIV testing would be offered, not required, to individuals receiving a screening for STIs or sexually transmitted infections. This includes obtaining consent and giving individuals the ability to opt out of the test if they choose. If we are to end HIV in the state of Texas, it's important that patients are afforded the opportunity to receive an HIV test when they receive typical HIV and STI screenings. Currently, when a patient visits their doctors and requests to be screened for STIs, they are not included by default. One thing just to note for important, that 12 people are diagnosed with HIV every day. And with that, I move past.
The question occurs to pass on engrossment, HB 3377. This is a record vote. Mr. Tinderholt, for what purpose? The question occurs to pass on engrossment, HB 3377. This is a record vote. The clerk read the bell. Mr. Jones of Dallas voting aye. Mr. Leach voting aye. Have all members voted? Mr. Leach voting aye. Have all members voted? There being 104 ayes, 39 nays. HB 3377 is passed to engrossment. Mr. Tinderholt, for what purpose?
I respectfully request that the dialogue between Representative Hayes and the chair on Tuesday on House Bill 2133 for the point of order be reduced to writing, placed in the journal.
Members, you heard the motion. Your objection, chair hears on order. The chair recognizes Mr. Vasut for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to suspend the 5-day posting rule to permit the Committee on Business and Industry in a public hearing on Monday, May 8th at 8:30 a.m. in room E2012 to consider SB 1464 by West relating to prohibiting a retail seller of motor vehicles from imposing certain restrictions on the purchase of a motor vehicle.
Members heard the motion. Your objection, chair hears on order. The following bills on first reading and referral. Without objection, the clerk will read the bills by bill number and author only.
HB 5418 by Goldman to Urban Affairs. SB 147 by Colcourse to State Affairs. SB 150 by Springer to Business and Industry. SB 246 by Alvarado to Licensing and Administrative Procedures. SB 410 by Paxton to Public Education. SB 414 by Paxton to Transportation. SB 427 by Colcourse to Higher Education. SB 469 by Springer to Natural Resources. SB 471 by Springer to Environmental Regulation. SB 595 by Colcourse to Public Education. SB 719 by Paxton to Ways and Means. SB 726 by Colcourse to Criminal Jurisprudence. SB 773 by Parker to Public Health. SB 789 by Johnson to Public Education. SB 1087 by Shortner to Public Education. SB 1098 by Paxton to Human Services. SB 1144 by Hughes to Public Education. SB 1187 by Hughes to County Affairs. SB 1192 by Zaffarini to Human Services. SB 1214 by Shortner to Urban Affairs. SB 1219 by Colcourse to State Affairs. SB 1242 by La Mantilla to Human Services. SB 1248 by Flores to State Affairs. SB 1341 by West to Public Health. SB 1344 by Nichols to Transportation. SB 1367 by Creighton to State Affairs. SB 1379 by Parker to Human Services. SB 1388 by Parker to Criminal Jurisprudence. SB 1402 by Zaffarini to Homeland Security and Public Safety. SB 1419 by Birdwell to Ways and Means. SB 1471 by Betancourt to Public Education. SB 1506 by Hughes to Public Education. SB 1529 by Miles to Energy Resources. SB 1565 by Hughes to Higher Education. SB 1606 by Zaffarini to Judiciary and Civil Jurisprudence. SB 1607 by Colcourse to Pensions, Investments, and Financial Services. SB 1668 by Hughes to Business and Industry. SB 1705 by Middleton to Elections. SB 1716 by Zaffarini to Transportation. SB 1766 by Creighton to County Affairs. SB 1817 by Betancourt to State Affairs. SB 1884 by Flores to State Affairs. SB 1932 by Creighton to Licensing and Administrative Procedures. SB 1969 by Betancourt to Criminal Jurisprudence. SB 1987 by Sparks to Higher Education. SB 1990 by Betancourt to Natural Resources. SB 1999 by Betancourt to Ways and Means. SB 2005 by La Mantilla to Ways and Means. SB 2008 by Colcourse to Insurance. SB 2017 by Zaffarini to Public Health. SB 2035 by Betancourt to Pensions, Investments, and Financial Services. SB 2052 by Nichols to Natural Resources. SB 2105 by Johnson to Business and Industry. SB 2106 by Zaffarini to Judiciary and Civil Jurisprudence. SB 2112 by Johnson to State Affairs. SB 2136 by Creighton to Higher Education. SB 2192 by Hall to Land and Resource Management. SB 2248 by Zaffarini to Judiciary and Civil Jurisprudence. SB 2256 by Blanco to Public Health. SB 2258 by Blanco to Elections. SB 2292 by Zaffarini to Judiciary and Civil Jurisprudence. SB 2314 by Hughes to Business and Industry. SB 2325 by Zaffarini to Culture, Recreation, and Tourism. SB 2350 by Betancourt to Ways and Means. SB 2358 by Parker to State Affairs. SB 2368 by Campbell to Public Education. SB 2453 by Menendez to State Affairs. SB 2468 by Eckhart to Public Health. SB 2474 by Hinojosa to Public Health. SB 2479 by Zaffarini to Criminal Jurisprudence. SB 2497 by Middleton to Public Education. SB 2577 by Flores to Land and Resource Management. SB 2579 by Zaffarini to Land and Resource Management. SB 2588 by Huffman to Land and Resource Management. SB 2591 by West to Human Services. SB 2605 by Flores to Land and Resource Management. SJR 64 by West to Ways and Means. SJR 82 by Johnson to State Affairs. SCR 26 by Hughes to International Relations and Economic Development. SCR 42 by Hinojosa to Culture, Recreation, and Tourism. The following resolutions are being referred to the Committee on Resolutions calendar. H.R. 1423 by Jahan, H.R. 1424 by Herrero, H.R. 1425 by Herrero, H.R. 1426 by Guerra, H.R. 1427 by Guerra, H.R. 1428 by Cunningham, H.R. 1429 by Cunningham, H.R. 1430 by Cunningham. The following resolutions by Shaheen are being referred to the Committee on Resolutions calendars. H.R. 1431 through H.R. 1442. H.R. 1443 by Kempel, H.R. 1444 by Gonzalez-El Paso, H.R. 1445 by Dutton.
Members, the Speaker's desk is clear. If you have any announcements, please bring them down front. Dr. Oliverson moves that the House adjourn until 10 a.m. Friday in the memory of Alan Vera of Houston. Is there objection? Chair hears none. The House stands adjourned.